Is that on running the meeting for us here? You're muted, whoever you are.
Elaine is in the background.
Elena, Lane.
Elaine's under the weather though, so she's just helping get the meeting started, and then I'll run the correspondence from this end because she's under the weather and she needs to go rest if all possible. So she's just helping because
Oh, absolutely.
I have terrible weather up here. The wind has been flickering my lights all night, so if the power goes out, at least we still have a recording of the meeting. So Elaine is pinch hitting for me tonight, which I definitely appreciate.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start the recording and call the meeting to order.
The recording has started.
Very good. Good afternoon. This is Tim O'Connell. I'm the chair of the Mercer Island Utility Board. We're having this meeting pursuant to due and public notice. I'll call the meeting to order. Who's going to call the roll?
I'll call roll. So Chair O'Connell.
All right, Jason. I am present.
Vice Chair Quantz.
You're muted. Well,
Board Member Majewski.
I'm present.
Board Member Marshall. Board Member Lair. And Board Member Milton.
Present.
Board Member Lair is out of the country today and had informed me of that. I'm sure George sometimes joins us a little late, so let's just go ahead and get going. Does anyone from the city know? Have we had anyone expressing any desire to make any public appearances?
No appearances this evening.
Before we go into the regular business, I'll just use chair's prerogative and just report to the board that I had, as normal kind of practice, made a presentation to the city council about the utility board's actions concerning the rate increases. Council agreed with our recommendations, and the main reason I wanted to make this report is that most of the members of the council stepped up to really express their appreciation for the work this board does. And so I want to just make sure that you were aware that, in fact, the city council does very much appreciate the work we do, and I certainly am proud to participate and to represent this board to the council when we make those recommendations. I just wanted to pass that along. Unless there's any comment and response, I'll just go ahead and go to the regular business. Is there anybody who's had the chance to review the minutes from our October meeting who would like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Yeah, they look correct to me. I'd motion to approve the minutes.
Moved by member Milton. Second that.
I second.
Vice Chair Quantz seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
All right. Aye.
Unanimous. And with that, I think the next item is the annual report from our friends at Recology. And I noticed we have at least 3 representatives from Recology. So Jason, if you want to do an introduction, or otherwise we can just go right into it.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for joining us this evening, the first meeting of 2024. Usually the Recology team comes at the end of the previous year, but due to some scheduling challenges and conflicts, we asked them to come this evening. And so General Manager Picotto and team are here, and I'll pass it over to Anthony and his team, and they can take the annual report, and we'll have lots of opportunity at the end for questions and answers. So with that, Anthony, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, and thank you all for the opportunity to come present tonight. Joining me are 2 folks from our management team. We've got Karen Dawson, recently just joined Recology as our government relations manager, and Alyssa Campbell, she's our Waste Zero manager, and she stepped into that role just this past summer, so fairly recently. And for those of you not familiar, our Waste Zero portion of our business oversees the education and outreach side of the business. And then Alyssa, if you're able to share, we can open up with the PowerPoint presentation. All right. Well, thanks, Alyssa. So to kick things off, first I'll start kind of going a little bit about from a service standpoint in our call center, and also our staffing, which is obviously a big part of our success. When you look at, we've got over 500 employees here in King County, and a large portion of those are drivers, which is obviously critical to the work we do in our daily collections. And then actually, I'm going to yield very quickly to Karen and Alyssa. I just want them to introduce themselves since they are new to our management team in this past year. So Karen, if you wouldn't mind, give a brief introduction, and then to Alyssa.
Sure. Yeah. So I started with Recology last week, but I came with some experience in the solid waste industry. So I worked for Cedar Grove since 2010, and served most recently as their director of public affairs. So had some interaction with the King County cities, and I'm really excited to join Recology and start this work and continue to work with Mercer Island. So thanks for having me, Alyssa.
And my name's Alyssa. I've been with Recology for about 2.5 years now. So I started on the Waste Zero team, working as a specialist, doing the on-the-ground outreach in the King County cities that we service, including Mercer Island. And so I'm happy now to be the Waste Zero manager, leading our team in reducing contamination in recycling and compost, and then also increasing diversion efforts just across all of our cities. And thank you for having us here also.
Thanks, Alyssa. So we'll go to the first slide, talk about staffing and our focus there, and this area of the business over the past year. So in 2023, from a management standpoint, as I mentioned, we hired Karen, and then Alyssa took over as the manager for this role. Some of you might remember Logan Harvey, who's our former government relations manager. He was actually promoted into a general manager position at one of our California companies. So he's still with Recology, just not up here in the Pacific Northwest. Our call center, we actually increased staffing by a little over 80% this past year. And we're going to continue to add to that team. For obvious reasons, you've got inclement weather, people get sick, take vacation. Having more and more support for that call center and the kind of the first line of defense for customer service, we found as obviously a big piece. And we have a local call center here in the Georgetown area of Seattle that services all of our King County cities. We increased our Waste Zero team over the past year and a half from about 4 to 9 Waste Zero specialists. And those are the folks that, as Alyssa mentioned, that are out there working with commercial properties, multifamily properties, targeting diversion goals, and really tailoring a program to the cities that we serve, with just that, to hit those diversion goals, but to also do things such as educate school children, lead MRF tours at our MRF in Seattle, our material recycling facility. So they're really a second arm to our whole customer service team, to be honest, and in some ways even kind of a de facto sales team, from working with commercial properties to helping them right size the proper service level that really fits their needs when it comes to recycling and trash and frankly food waste diversion. And then the big one is driver headcount. I'll go to a bit later in the slideshow here, but just in the past quarter, or Q4 of 2023, we hired 16 new drivers, and we've really taken a different approach on how we're hiring drivers, the onboarding process. We actually hired a full-time trainer who's developed this in-house CDL training program that we've gotten off the ground. So we're able to take employees, all of our in-house employees on the front labor side are all Teamsters. They're all part of the same Teamster Local 174. So having a MRF sorter be able to work through the company and get their CDL and become a driver is really a life-changing opportunity in terms of the type of opportunity they can provide for themselves and their family. So having that in-house trainer has been really big, but also we developed an apprentice program. We used to have a hard line in terms of if you come to be a driver, you need at least 1 year experience. We have dropped that down to 0 years of experience, because we will bring that person into our apprentice program and train them. So for the first 6 months, they have a methodical approach to how to operate the vehicle and train them. We found this is working much better in terms of we're training really industrial athletes to collect garbage and recycling and food waste, versus the historical route of looking for someone with a CDL who may have been a long haul driver. And sometimes those folks pan out, Oftentimes not, because it really is a different type of work in terms of the physicality and the focus, and frankly, a lot of the safety and dangers out there on the road operating this type of vehicle. So those have been our big kind of cornerstones area for hiring. Our pipeline for new hires is about 30 to 40 drivers in background. It takes them about 4 to 5 weeks to get through the background process, but we've found keeping that pipeline full, allows us to start about 3 new drivers a week on average. And what that does is, provide some buffer there for the inevitable turnover. Frankly, some folks, they get out there and they realize, hey, maybe this is not the right job for me, but it allows us to make sure we're finding the right candidates for the job. Speaking in terms from Mercer Island standpoint, historically, since we started the contract, it's been a little bit more challenging to develop a bench strength in terms of relief drivers, just because it's so much more technical driving in Mercer Island. And so what we've found is we've got some really strong veteran drivers driving in Mercer Island, but having them part of that training curriculum to tailor training for relief drivers for Mercer Island has been and will continue to be a big part of the success. So making sure that that's incorporated in the training and onboarding. And what I mean by technical is, as you all know, narrow driveways, a lot of back ends. We use limited access vehicles or lab trucks. They're a little bit smaller, but require just more cognizance in terms of how they maneuver on the properties throughout the island. So that's been a big area of focus for us. Next slide. From the call center standpoint, you get a sense here over trailing 12 months from October going back. You look at the type of call volumes that are coming in, emails, so you can get a sense of the type of communication. Text message is an option. You see here, we don't get a whole lot of text messages. Over the next year, we will be developing kind of more of a live chat feature for our call center, which we think will be highly used, kind of in place of text, just the way the technology is going and how a lot of folks like to communicate. But that being said, obviously direct calls to a live human is clearly the most preferable approach. Next slide. Average seconds to answer. So our target is to have at least 80% of our calls to be answered in 20 seconds or less. So you look at this average over the trailing 12 months and you see, based on fluctuation, but overall, we're actually hitting that about 8 seconds or less is our average on there. So you kind of see the little bit of fluctuation there in terms of some of our peak season, but overall, pretty quick to answer. Another piece of that, the call center stats we get is average handling time. So you look at resolving an issue, and that's trends close to about 4 minutes, depending what that issue may be. And so this, oftentimes in call centers is a push to get folks taken care of off the phone, but part of our coaching and our and training with our CSRs or customer service reps is to make sure that we're really working to resolve the issue for the customers. So our customer service manager, Brittany, will actually spend quite a bit of time listening into calls and doing scenario-based coaching. A big piece of that is empathy. And in working through the issue, even if you can't potentially solve the issue on the phone, it's critical to show that empathy and support for the customer because there could be a variety of things going on that could be affecting service. So that's been a big focus in the last couple of months at the end of 2023. Abandoned calls. We don't see a lot of these, but looking past over the past year, you can see how that trend. I mean, basically under 2% of calls are abandoned, and these are ones we do audit and go look at. It can be for a variety of reasons. Maybe someone just realizes, hey, maybe I can email, or maybe it's not that big of an issue. But we do take those seriously and do check those to audit them for why they may have hung up or abandoned the call, and if it's a coaching opportunity for the customer service rep as well. So this is a pretty important metric, obviously. So misses per 1,000, and how we gauge misses. Sort of the customer calls in, hey, I was missed. Typically what happens is we've got onboard tablets on the truck that are geolocated, so we can detect to see if the driver just blew by the stop. Did they properly status? Did they collect the stop? Our overall target is less than 1 per 1,000. So you see here that that's pretty much the trend along here. However, that being said, Mercer Island, given the veteran drivers that we have and the mostly residential, I mean, truthfully, that it should be close to as close to possible to zero. I mean, we see when we see spikes such as this past June, that's when typically we see some staffing challenges with enhanced vacations, things like that. I mean, while that is below the 1 per thousand, that's not really to our expectation of being close to zero as possible. So you see that spike. And then October, we had a variety of challenges with staffing and some newer drivers out on routes, which you can see, you saw a spike in October there with misses. Inclement weather and outreach to customers. As you all know, living in this area, especially in the King County area, there's a lot of these microclimates that happen. And so we actually rehearse kind of starting early November, even as early as late October with our operations team and call center team on how to handle this. And frankly, we go out there when there is a snowstorm or an ice storm event. We start as early as midnight driving the routes for the next day to assess, if they're safe to drive in, what are the impacts. And our goal is, it's not only a contractual goal, but also our contractual mandate, but also a goal internally is to have a decision by 6 a.m. in terms of if we need to do a late start or if the weather is severe enough to where we're just not going to be able to collect that day. But these are some tools that we engage in to ensure that we're getting that communication out to customers. Obviously, we've got our website, social media. The Call Them All is actually a program that we use that automatically calls any residents that are affected to let them know what the status or situation for collection is. So obviously, this is an opportunity to be as proactive as possible. We've already had multiple huddles internally here, just looking at the forecast at the end of the week. And seeing those flurries on there, you really don't know how it's going to affect each of our cities. And we can count on that it's going to affect all of our cities a little bit differently. So we're going to be proactive as possible to assess how that's going to potentially impact service. Okay, I will yield to Alyssa to talk about outreach from this past year.
Yeah, so we had a great year in Mercer Island in 2023. We try our best to get to every single sector within the city. So as you can see in some of the outreach that is listed here, it spans from multifamily to commercial to schools and then the broader community. So this year we went to 2 different multifamily properties to provide reusable recycle bags. So that's to reduce how much plastic bag contamination is ending up in the recycling bin. And then we also provided Recycle Right door hangers, which provides more information to tenants on how to recycle well, kind of contamination to avoid, and then tips on hazardous waste and bulky items, how to get rid of those. In addition to that, we've done on-site visits with businesses in Mercer Island. So those are informed by the contamination tags that our drivers leave. When they service each property, if they see a certain level of contamination, they'll actually input that information and my team will review that. So we visited multiple businesses to kind of speak with properties to make sure that they had the right tools to use their services correctly. As well, we're also looking into which properties have a very high level of trash and maybe either no recycle or low recycle levels or no compost or low compost levels, and kind of calling them and doing on-site outreach as appropriate so that we can get them set up with the right services. In addition, as you see in the picture here, we have done a couple school visits in Mercer Island. So we did a presentation at Northwood School. And so that was in April. And then we also went to West Mercer Elementary as well. So this other photo is from the Mercer Islands Farmers Market. So we like to go as many of those as possible, provide sorting guides and additional information to folks who have questions about their services. We'll also take customer service requests as well. So in addition to the farmers markets, we were also at the summer celebration and the Leap for Green event, which we'll look forward to being at again in 2024. So speaking of 2024, we will continue our efforts, as I mentioned previously, to reduce contamination as well as increasing diversion. So we'll use that data that we have, customer information based on the volumes of service and then what our drivers are seeing in the field, and using that information to inform our cold calls and cold visits that we do with folks. And in addition to that, we, of course, advertise our services online through the website and also through our social media pages, which we're updating regularly. So another piece of that is promoting events that we have going on at our Recology stores as well. So as you can see, we have an ad here for the February workshop that we have planned. So that will be going through each weekend in February to help folks to make sure that their scissors for crafts and such are working. We've done this workshop before and it was a really popular one. So we'll keep those going through the year and providing promotional material for that. And then as well, we'll continue our outreach at schools and we'll continue partnering with the city to find new events in the city to reach folks. Shout out to Alana DeRogatis. I've been working with her to reduce contamination and to find more opportunities for reaching people and engaging in the community.
Thank you, Alyssa. And so I also wanted to touch on the rate aspect of the contract going into 2024. So this year, the portion of the rate is the recycling rate adjustment, which we'll do a characterization of recycling. I believe it's in May and then again in September, which factors into the rate for the following year in January. So this year, due to commodity prices, there's will be a rate increase of about 26 cents for residential customers and 17 cents per yard for multifamily customers. And what's driving that is essentially year over year, the commodity values for the recycling has actually decreased, which creates an increase for the customer on there. So that you might have remember from last year for 2023 rates, there was actually a decrease for Mercer Island residents, and that was because the previous year there was an increase in commodity values, and how that's tracked. Next slide. So I want to touch on the CPI adjustment of the rate. So this just affects the collection portion, right? There's two components to the rate. There's the disposal piece, and then there's the collection piece. So the CPI, or inflation, affects the collection portion of the rate. And you can see here there was a 6.5% increase on CPI. However, the solid waste contract has a ceiling of 5%. It's actually one of our few contracts that have that. So that was what the collection portion of the rate increased by 5% for 2024. And then here you can see year over year 2023 rates versus 2024 rates. I also included the fixed annual charge piece. Some of you may be familiar with the fixed annual charge, or FAC. This is a system that King County put into place to assess disposal costs. Really what's driving this is as there's become increased diversion in King County, they really need another way for revenue to support their operations. And so it's a fixed charge based on the previous year's overall tonnage by each city for trash. Thus, what they also did was they reduced the the disposal portion of the rate. So for 2024, year over year, King County disposal rate reduced by 10.58%. You can see there from $168.68 down to $150.83 per ton. And then that fixed portion, so the customer will see that as its own line item on there. And we also, our mailers that we sent out in November, our annual mailers, explains and gives a little context to the FAC and what it is. And then also King County also has an FAQ on their website as well to explain all King County residents what that is. So you can see here with that drop that helps offset a little bit on the overall rate with the 5% CPI increase. But then you've also got the second line item of the fixed annual charge based on what your subscription rate is per cart, or if you're a multifamily customer on your per cubic yard on your services. So I also wanted to cap off and kind of go over some opportunities that we're really excited about, and also some challenges that we're working through. And I kind of wanted to distill it down to a few key items, because it's really going to set the tone for 2024, but also ensure that we have a successful summer. When I say successful, I mean strong continuity of service along with quality of service. being proactive to addressing customer concerns. And a big piece of that is the staffing front up front and taking care of Mercer Island residents. So on the staffing front, worked really hard starting the end of the summer to address some gaps in our recruiting, programs or systems. So we've allocated more recruiters to the team, but then also how we're bringing folks in. So I mentioned reducing the years of experience with the CDL because we have our own internal training program, but then also kind of guiding the candidate through to get their physical, go through all those steps, which typically would take someone from application to come into the door about 6 or 7 weeks. We've got that down to about 4 weeks, so shortening that timeline, but also continuing to find different methods and platforms to seek out drivers. And the same with mechanics. That's obviously a big piece of it is fixing trucks. I mean, obviously a lot of wear and tear on our trucks. We try to keep a ratio of about 9 to 10 trucks per mechanic. So this is an area that we're continuing to develop some apprentice programs with the machinist union. That's our mechanics are a part of. And so with the goal to continue to expand that CDL driver pipeline and just to have a large relief pool of drivers. We've got quite a bit of work in terms of opportunities. So we don't really have a cap. And we kind of did the numbers and looked at just our overall retirement rate and folks that just normal attrition. It makes sense to continue to bring drivers on, train them, just because it does take a while to get them up to speed with this type of work, which is very different than if you looked at, say, the freight industry as an example. Another big opportunity is our new hauling yard that we're building out up near the town of Maltby in Snohomish County. This helps service and continuity of service from Mercer Island for a couple of reasons. One, we'll be servicing 2 of our King County cities out of this yard, Bothell and Shoreline. So sucking about 30 to 40 trucks out of our Seattle yard is going to provide better maintenance coverage on our Mercer Island trucks, frankly. So that's also going to provide just more shop bays in terms of ratio of shop bays and mechanics to trucks and so on. So we're really excited about that because all the cities we service out of our Seattle yard are just going to have more attention and less strained on resources as we open this new yard up in Snohomish County. One of the other things that I wanted to address, some folks may have heard of this, is something that Recology as a whole is working through. In the beginning of November, this past November, we had a cybersecurity event. It was basically a cyber attack that really targeted our virtual, what's it called? A VPN. So we use Citrix, which a lot of folks are familiar with. But it was this is widely publicized if you look it up online. But it was something our IT folks identified as an issue or something going wrong, and so actually proactively shut down all of our internal systems. We brought in a third-party forensics team, a cybersecurity forensics team, to basically scan all of our systems. We do run backups, but they run in parallel to each other. So after some further review from this forensics team, we thought it'd be best to rebuild our servers with safe and healthy backup data. So it's taken us quite a bit of while to get our internal systems booted back up. And when I say internal systems, that's our customer relationship management software. That's a lot of our systems that allow us to do effective routing, our onboard routing technology and tablets. So effectively, those were down. Our call center was operating. We could still take calls. We're obviously out still collecting trash. This is over 100-year-old industry. But this day and age, that was something we had a lot of learnings through in terms of going back 20, 25 years in terms of how we were collecting garbage and communicating internally in any issues. So because of that, we did identify every once in a while we'd have some pockets of misses in some places. Depending on how well the driver knew their route. So going back to kind of old school maps, things like that, were really we had to manage through this. But through that, our internal systems were back up online. The last remaining system that we're bringing back online is our onboard tablets. So right now our drivers are still working with paper route sheets that they're manually checking. But with that, our company as a whole for Recology is working through building back much stronger, more resilient systems in terms of taking into account some of these cyber threats that are out there. 2023, it's been published as one of the most severe cyber attack years for companies in the United States and municipalities. So obviously this is something that as we're brought things back online, we're deploying the most I guess best in class cybersecurity type software and things like that. Mirroring our systems in the cloud for quick movement if we need to revert to that. So those are things we're working on. What that did also affect is some of the billing cycles for some of our cities, just because there's some delay on that. Our next quarterly billing cycle for Mercer Island will be on time, which would take place in March. We were about a month and a half late on billing, which would normally the quarter going from October, November, December would typically go out the first week of November. We didn't get those bills out till about mid-December and put notices out there. One of the things that we've been letting customers know is that we don't keep or house any personal identification information, such as credit card information or banking information internally on our systems. That's all housed with our banking partner with Wells Fargo, which is completely separate from any of our systems that were at risk from being affected when we took them down. So just giving that, I guess, comfort and somewhat assurance to our customers that that type of information was not compromised to our knowledge. We're still actively investigating the situation and hope to have more updates as we go forward, but the focus has been on getting all our systems back online safely. So that's kind of the year in review. Like I mentioned, our probably again our largest focus, I don't want to understate, is been on the recruiting and driver retention aspect, and to continue to build a strong bench as we go forward in terms of support and relief drivers. And with that, would love to open it to any questions or comments. Yeah, Steve.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah.
Your hand is up.
So I had a question, I guess, on some of the call center growth you were mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, the 80% increase in your call center staff, I guess is what you're specifically referring to. So was that due to basically additional city contracts, or was that staffing up based on just increased call volumes on the existing contracts that you had?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good point. So primarily for existing contracts we did picked up the city of Tukwila back in November, and we added additional headcount specifically because of that. But the additional staffing was just looking back for the past couple of years and just realizing that we've always been better served to be overstaffed, considering all the variables that can happen throughout the year. So that's been a goal of ours.
Got it. And I have another question if no one else has anyone or wanted to jump in.
I don't see any other hands up, so go ahead, Steve.
On the chart that you had about the number of calls per month for the trailing 12, it looked like this year was a lot higher than the prior year, like 50% or so, at least higher than like on the number of calls. I was just curious if you guys have done analysis and breakdown on what the reasons were for that large an increase in call traffic.
Yeah, so looking at depending on the time of year, there's a couple different drivers of that. During this past summer was probably one of our more, probably since COVID, probably one of our more challenging staffing summers in terms of just we had a lot of turnover with new drivers coming. That really what was the impetus of taking us a different look on how we were recruiting and training. We did notice, especially in areas and cities where we really relied on a lot of veteran drivers, that more technical areas, it's very difficult to find newer drivers to sub in there, and so that was certainly generating higher call volume, higher misses or delays or potentially rolled routes. And then obviously we had a lot more breakdowns this last summer. We've kind of retooled how we do road calls with our maintenance team. Just to actually put more emphasis on going out there to the truck to assess it rather than the truck having to get a tow truck and come all the way back in. So we also know that that delayed, that facilitator or lent to more routes, I would say, than the previous year in terms of rolled routes because of that. So that's going to be a point of emphasis this coming summer is more in the field support for maintenance.
Got it. Well, then just as a I guess as a comment, from all appearances, at least from my perspective, you guys seem to have handled your cybersecurity incident fairly well. It hasn't been the staff working on the paper sheets, et cetera. Seems like they've been doing a good job, at least from my neighborhood here. So.
Well, thank you. It's definitely a learning going back into old school. So a lot of huddles with the team just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
There are advantages to a low tech lifestyle sometimes. If none of the other board members have a question, I do. I'm curious. I noted the comment that added 16 drivers Q4. I'm curious, what is actually the absolute number of headcount? What is headcount, like say January 1 of this year as opposed to January 1 of a year ago?
Good question. So we're up on headcount year over year, probably by about 25 drivers. So that's net with attrition. We like to see a little bit higher in terms of what our ratio is, just factoring in that we know we've got a lot of folks slated for retirement this year as well. And it just seems like every time, and historically, every time we've had a number, it's never enough in terms of what our target is. So we've really just told our recruiting team we just need to have an open standing recruiting. I'll probably be long gone or retired before we feel like we've got enough drivers. So that tells you anything in terms of the industry and the demand and needs. So we're just going to keep recruiting and bringing them in because as we've seen, there's just so many variables that can happen. And we've got a lot of really good drivers that are within close retirement age here in the next 5 years. So that's another kind of warning signal in the distance.
Steven.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. So my neighbor is elderly, and whenever I see the trash get picked up, and I always look because it's a big event in the house. He not only empties her trash, but then he rolls the can all the way down to her house down the long driveway, and I think that's exemplary. So it's a testament to your drivers. Thank you.
Thanks for that feedback.
Well, unless you've got a question, I've got another. Oh, there we go. Raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah, good question. Just curious, when you saw the issues, when you had so many new staff earlier this year, were there any lessons that you were able to implement to better keep operations moving as you have new staff join?
Absolutely. We've spent quite a bit more time. Obviously, the cybersecurity event derailed things a little bit. Spent more time on the training of the tablets and what it is, how to use that tool. And it really should be a supportive tool, not something they're 100% dependent on, but it should help them provide better service rather than just being glued to it. So we've seen some challenge where folks are, I don't know how to read this tablet, so I can't collect my route, and that's pretty frustrating. And so retooling how we're training on that front. And then also just making sure that they understand where they're going and what the issues are. And I think historically it's always, hey, we got to get this guy out on route, get him so he's taking care of the customer. But if they don't have the right tools or if they're not up to snuff, they're probably going to cause more challenges and issues in terms of miscollections or just poor service, frankly, because they may not know better or what. And we've seen that some places, and it can cause a lot of frustration for the customer.
I have another question following up on the presentation. I noted your comment that you had an apprenticeship program for your CDL drivers. Is that a formal state apprenticeship council approved apprenticeship program, or is it more informal than that?
It's actually more informal. So what we've done is taken our same CDL program and training that's been certified by the state. And we're applying that to drivers that have their own CDL but have less than 6 months of experience. So they're kind of going through the same rigors we would put someone through who are training to get their CDL, so they get familiar with the trucks, the turning radius, how the truck operates, and that's been our approach.
Very good.
I like your phrase about the athletes. I can't remember what the exact phrase you used, but thinking of the drivers of those trucks a little bit differently, because it's a very much more active role than your long haul trucker. So that's a good insight.
Yeah, industrial athlete. It's
There you go, industrial athlete.
difference.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I like it. Any other questions from any other members of the board? Anthony, any parting thoughts from you or any other member of your team?
Just thank you for the opportunity. I mean, we really appreciate the opportunity to serve Mercer Island, and our dedicated drivers for that city love the heck out of their routes and take a lot of pride in it. And so we're eager to keep that going and make sure we're providing the support to our frontline team.
Well, on behalf of the board, thank you very much for coming in this evening, and thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the work you guys do.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jason, if you're still with us. Next item of business for us is a discussion about the work plan, and this, I don't know what happened, why I'm all, at least on my screen, I'm very pink. I don't know why. I assure you I'm well, so I don't know what the technology issue. So
You are very pink. I'm not sure what we can do about it on our end, but we'll figure something out. So as far as the work plan goes, we put the draft work plan in the packet. We are going to talk about it at the February meeting. So we do have a meeting next month on February 13th. It will be on the Zoom platform. We have a bylaws update, and then we will actually sort of go through the work plan. We're still tinkering with it a bit, just sort of looking at schedules and timing for some of these big projects, and want to make sure we have timely updates for you and plan them in. So I will say, if you do look ahead, the fall, we've started the rate discussion in September and October. We have a recess scheduled for November. That's by design, in case our conversations over rates carry into a third meeting. We can certainly call the meeting for November if we need it. But then we're just sort of, like I said, we're tinkering with some of the other items throughout the course of the year, and just trying to line up our timing on project updates and things like that a bit better. So we'll have an updated work plan for you in February. We'll do the bylaws. Our city clerk will come in and talk about bylaws, and then we'll start getting into some bigger topics later this year.
well, I was going to ask a question about the work plan. Like when I looked at it, I've been on the board for 10 years or 11 years, one or the other, 10 or 11 years. I can't recall ever seeing bylaws. So, but the topic is entitled as a bylaws update, which is yes, there are bylaws to begin with.
There are bylaws to begin with, and we do need to update them. So all the other boards and commissions actually have been updating the bylaws lately, and so we're one of the last remaining boards and commissions to actually go through this exercise, which is perfectly okay. You guys have a great conversation about it, and we let some of the other boards and commissions work out the bylaw questions ahead of time. So it should be a good discussion. But yeah, we do have bylaws for the utility board. We absolutely do. I will also make a note. Board member Picorni had to resign due to some family and work stuff. He had a long tenured service with us, and so we wish him nothing but the best. He will stay in touch. We do have a vacancy on the board. We will be talking about that with the council. I think just given the timing of the year, and we start to ramp up for board reappointments in the spring anyways. So I suspect we probably will just sort of sit tight until the normal cycle, but I could be wrong. More to come, but that's what I'm anticipating will happen, is we'll loop this vacancy into the rest of it. I know his position was actually up this year anyways, and so we have sort of this
terms expire in May, isn't it?
Correct. Terms expire in May, so if we appoint someone, they get appointed for a couple months, and then they have to get reappointed. So anyways, more to come, but I'm anticipating we'll just sort of go through the normal process with it. So
Jason, who else's term is up this May besides Will?
I have to look. I will look, and I'll have that information for you guys the next meeting.
Stephen Majewski as the only one.
There you go.
And FYI, I'm still listed as vice chair on the website, so you might want to get that set for Will.
Thank you. We'll do.
Very good. Next meeting's February 13. Is there any other business that should come before the board?
Oh, I did have
No,
a
hearing-
question. On the, you mentioned that the next meeting will be another Zoom meeting, and it kind of feels like with the progress that the city council is making towards going back to in-person meetings, it sounds like more like this is almost come a meeting by meeting, deciding whether or not it's going to be Zoom or other. Is that kind of correct, or is the intent to stay Zoom for an extended period, or what?
I think the near future will be Zoom for the near future. Long term is still we're working that out. The intent is ultimately to have the boards and commissions come back in person like the council is, but it's a rolling sort of exercise. And so I think for the near future will be Zoom. I think maybe towards the second half of this year, it might be a different conversation. It might be more meeting by meeting. They've just had the first council meeting in person, so we're still working out some of the kinks and things like that. So stay tuned, but I think that's probably your horizon right now. Is near term is going to be Zoom, and then maybe towards the second half of the year we might be getting in person, or at least meeting by meeting.
Fair enough.
I will say,
You know, I
for the great conversations, it might be more beneficial to have an in-person meeting if at all possible.
that's exactly where I was going to go, Jason. If we were able to do that by the time we get around to the rate review in early fall, that would I think that would really be beneficial.
Yeah.
Great question, Steve. Anything else? Don't want to cut us off. It's only 5:50. But hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Anybody second?
Second.
Steven seconds. Anybody opposed, for God's sakes? No, I should go. All right. We'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. See you in February.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.